There's one question with this new era of Pokemon cards, and that is, what's actually gonna happen from here? Because it seems that none of this is really that sustainable. Though before I get into this video, I'm actually gifting one subscriber this awesome Tinglu special illustration rare. Now, if I reply to your comment with this Bulbasaur emoji, then congratulations, this card is coming your way. Now, the reason I say this is because it actually seems the hype for Pokemon cards has kind of extended for far past more than anyone expected. And what I mean by this, right, is when Prismatic Evolutions released and the whole ordeal with that happened, everyone was like, okay, yeah, cool. It's gonna last like a month, maybe 2 months, but we're gonna get back to normal a little bit later on in this year. But normal never really happened. And now we're in this weird position because it's like, wait, are things gonna return to some level of normal behavior? Or is it just gonna be a game of waiting around and if you don't pre-order a set, the second it drops, you just won't get the set. You know what, dude? It's actually so wild because the way I get my new Pokemon sets at the moment is I just purchase them all from EB Games. Like in Australia, we have EB Games. You guys would have GameStop if you're from US or other parts of the world. But how it works is that at 12 p.m. there is a drop for the brand new Pokemon sets, and then I have like 1 hour to purchase the sets that I want. And there's very strict purchasing limits as well. And honestly, that's the only way I'm able to get my product at the moment. Now, that's not really a fun way to buy Pokemon cards, and I much prefer the way of just walking into a store, seeing what's available at the moment and buying whatever I feel. But those days have changed. But I do feel that it will come back eventually because Pokemon must get a bit of a hold for this new demand. And they have had a few months to kind of now adjust to this new level of hype. And we can even see with Phantasmal Flames and how many people are excited for that. Maybe we really need to up our printing capabilities to deal with this newfound demand. Fair enough with Destined Rivals, they maybe weren't that prepared, Prismatic Evolutions, but right now it seems that you need to be a little bit more prepared for what's to come. Now, something that I think is also a big area that we need to talk about is the popularity of the game Pokemon TCG Pocket, which is kind of the reason why the whole hype wave started. But you can actually see here on Google Trends that the searches and general popularity is slightly dwindling down for Pokemon TCG Pocket. That doesn't really mean much at the moment, but if the hype doesn't really last and it becomes like Pokemon Go when it had that huge hype swing in 2016, and then by 2018 it was just kind of a normal regular player base that remained. Kind of feel like we're going through that right now. Pokemon TCG Pocket had that huge influx of people, and now we're kind of just finding out the market of the real genuine people who are just remaining after all that's said and done. But I do want to go over certain cards and certain prices about sets, and I also want to speak about why some of the prices feel a little bit different and maybe it's not that sustainable in the long term. I mean, check some of these out. It's actually getting pretty crazy with the market and how volatile it is. All right, first one is, Pikachu Surging Sparks was a very hyped card. Actually hasn't gone back to its original high price point when it released, and I do feel a lot of that has to do with the fact that we just had much cooler artworks released after this card came out. Now, interestingly, we can see the card was selling for $256 in August. Right now, the Pikachu is selling for $350 US. If I pull this into the year graph, because it's nearly a year old right now, you can actually see that the high point for this card was nearly 500 US. Now, it's never kind of gone back to that price point, but here's the interesting thing about this card. When this card released, it became the most expensive card for the Scarlet and Violet era straight away, but of course, right after that, you had Prismatic Evolutions, Destined Rivals, the whole lot, and now this card has just kind of lost a little bit of its magic. While I do like the artwork, I do feel for, a lot of Pikachu collectors, they're probably a little bit disappointed with this card. I don't think it's that much of a standout for an artwork as a lot of the other cards, like when you look at Greninja or, other cards in this era, much bigger standouts than this one. In fact, when I saw the special illustration rare, to me, it didn't even really look like a special illustration rare. So I do think that has a big reason why the price hasn't really shot up so much in price. But nonetheless, collectors do like this card. They're interested in it, they're vibing with it. So, we're going to see where it really goes. Now, also, while we're looking at some of these prices, if you do collect these cards, it's very important that you track your collection over the long term. And that does actually bring me to today's video sponsor, which is Collector. So I've been using Collector for a very long time, and honestly, it's one of the easiest ways to track your collection's value. But it's not just for tracking your collection's worth, it also is a very powerful research tool. Collector has a very unique set analytics section, and honestly, this is where it really stands out. With set analytics, it provides you a volatility score based on previous market performances for any sets. By using these tools, you can actually decide what to actually buy by doing your own research. Collector has completely changed the way the community buys and tracks Pokemon cards. And with Collector, you can see trends, you can spot opportunities, and if you are a pro member, you can even scan cards straight into your collection with your phone's camera. Now, if you're serious about collecting or you just want to keep an eye on your Pokemon collection, this is hands down one of the best tools you can have. A big thanks to Collector for sponsoring today's video. You can find all the details within the video's description. Now let's get back into the video. Now, moving on to the big interesting one, which is Umbreon, or it did have a name, Sunbreon, which, fair enough, that name's retired because, it doesn't have a sun in the background. I call this the Majora's Mask Umbreon because the artwork reminds me of Zelda Majora's Mask. That name's never gonna catch on, but if it does, started here, just so you know. Anyway, we can see right now, we're selling for $970. It kind of found a low point for $840 US. Right now selling for $1,143. Pull this into the year graph, okay? You can see the highest point this had was like around 1.6K, right? So 1,600 went down all the way to 850. Right now selling for 1,100. This card is a little bit volatile for my liking at the moment, given it did have a big kind of price drop and now it's kind of retracing. Look, it is an Umbreon. But like I always say, it does feel like it's just, a bit of a stamp copy repeat from Umbreon. Whether or not this card is going to maintain in the market, it is kind of now maybe getting to a point where, it's going to find its price point. I feel like 1,600 was very overvalued. I kind of feel like 850 was probably not too bad of a price point for this card. But of course, the market's now saying, hey, you know what? It's probably going to be like leveling out at 1,200. Now that we're approaching the winter period as well for the other side of the world, because in Australia, as you can tell, we're in summer or, approaching summer, as you can see what I'm wearing. Now, moving on to one of my personal favorites, the Greninja Special Illustration Rare. Now, I'm going to pull this into the 6 months, right? You can see this card was selling for $265 in July. Right now selling for $362. Definitely had some price growth. If I pull this in the year graph, you can actually see it hasn't risen past its previous high point, which was, $410. I find it interesting that the Bubble Mew went so high. I find it interesting that, the Pikachu also had that high price point, but for some reason, the Greninja and the Pikachu are the ones that lagged behind a little bit, which is actually kind of weird because they're very popular Pokemons. One thing about the Scarlet and Violet era, and something I'm just thinking about the longevity for the hobby, right? How can it be that all these new Pokemon cards are getting these huge price points, but when you kind of go back to Sword and Shield cards and even a lot of Sun and Moon cards, a lot of cards aren't anywhere near these price points. So it's like, are people collecting for rarity or are people just collecting for popularity? Because if you do look at Sword and Shield and especially Sun, Moon, and especially XY, those cards are so rare. They're like genuinely rare Pokemon cards. These cards of today, I don't know, the word rare is kind of losing its meaning. They're rare in terms of pulling the cards, but in terms of the abundance of these that are out there at the moment, in terms of how, well people look after these cards, whether or not these cards are that rare anymore, I'm not too sure. It's going to be interesting because I feel like it's going to make sense in a few years. And what I mean by that is like, in 2020, 30 or what, 20, I can't even say it anymore, 2031. I'm going to look back at 2031. I'm going to look at this and, it's going to be like, oh, wow, that's what happened during this time. Now it makes sense. But right now it's like, well, who knows where it's going, right? Now, another interesting one is the Charizard from Pokemon 151, selling for $194, went all the way up to $307. And right now it's kind of retracing at $286. Not big price drops, but you can see that actually wasn't that expected for me. Even though the pull rates for this card are a little bit easier, I actually expected this to keep climbing because, the whole Charizard hype. $286 for this card, not too bad given how many people love Charizard, given its position in the market, given the fact that it is from Pokemon 151. But of course, Pokemon 151, when you compare it to other Scarlet and Violet era sets, really, really generous pull rates in comparison to a lot of these. Now, when we're talking about banana things, okay, Destined Rivals is banana behavior, okay? Now, if you're new to the channel, banana behavior just means when you see, people just overpaying on things. A lot of people like to use different words. I just call them bananas. At the moment, Destined Rivals, dude, it is a brand new set. Just look at these prices, right? When it released, selling for $256, all right? Even a bit before that. July, selling for $256. Went all the way up to $467 US a booster box. Mind you, in September, that set was like 3 to 4 months old. That is not cool, dude. Like, to get prices like that, there is some serious issues happening right now. Thankfully, it has dropped to $398. Now, it's dropped $70. It's good that it's dropped and it hasn't continued to climb, but that is still so high for a new set. Destined Rivals by no means is an older set. By no means is it, out of print. by no means should it be getting anywhere near those price points right now. That kind of price point is something you would expect a year and a half out of a print window when a lot of the cards start rising and you just get excited when you're looking back. Right now, this is getting a little bit worrisome because yes, they're very expensive. Yes, a lot of people like Destined Rivals, but at the same time, dude, this is just like so tough. So tough because, a lot of newcomers are coming into the hobby and, I actually see it a lot. A lot of people on my channel be like, hey, Phil, I'm leaving the hobby. And to be honest, I don't really blame them at this point because like when you're getting new sets, it does take the fun a little bit out of it, right? I mean, I get paying a little bit over retail price to secure some product, but when you got to pay that, that's like ridiculous, dude. Like you got to remember, right? Back like in 2023, you could get Scarlet and Violet base booster boxes for, 105, even 90 US. So that is 4 times more than what you could get booster boxes for in 2023 at retail price. Something has to get done when you can see prices like that. And of course, Team Rocket's Mewtwo selling for 340 US, right now selling for $550. Not too surprised there, given how awesome, Mewtwo is as a Pokemon, especially for the fandom. But where this doesn't make sense, and like I said, Pokemon collecting, if you try to make logic out of it, this is not the place for you because none of it really just kind of makes sense on a logical level. Sure, the Team Rocket's Mewtwo is awesome, but when we're looking at the Shining Legends Mewtwo in Near Mint, which is also known as Mewtwo, a very, very old card from 2017, this is when the pieces of the puzzle start getting very confusing. Team Rocket's Mewtwo, brand new card, brand new set, a lot of hype, selling for $550. This card from 2017, mind you, it's actually getting close to 10 years old right now, selling for $515 near mint. That is so bizarre when you look at that. That just makes no sense. And like I said, if you're trying to place logic would say this card is so rare right now. This card is such a cool artwork. Sure, the PSA 10's expensive, but really the raw copy of this card, this should be, even in my mind, 3 times more than the Destined Rivals Mewtwo. Why does the Destined Rivals Mewtwo get to kind of, exceed this card's price point in near mint? Very, very interesting right now for that. Sure, a lot of people don't trust near mint anymore when the cards get much older. It still is a very, very beloved card, and it's a very old card as well. So, for that reason, that is a bit weird at the moment. Also, if you have questions relating to certain Pokemon cards, or you have photos of cards that you want to get graded and you just want a second opinion, feel free to ask that in my channel's Discord. We have over 10,000 members. The server invite is in the channel's description. Now, we can also see the Prismatic Evolutions ETBs are having a spike in price as well, selling for 98 US in August, right now selling for $137. And at the moment, maybe Prismatic Evolutions may continue to climb. I'm not sure. We do know that the reprint window for that was very long. As you can see, if I pull that into the year graph, you can see that Prismatic Evolutions, had a big hype wave, then it kind of dropped, then it kind of had another hype wave, then it really dropped, and now it's kind of in another hype wave. So we're going to see where it levels out, whether or not we're going to get more product. I do feel we will get more Prismatic Evolutions, but of course, people just eat that setup. Now, another interesting one is the Eevee from Twilight Masquerade. Just one I wanted to look at. Selling for $50 in August, went all the way up to 77 US, and right now selling for 71. I do think this is a really cool artwork. Interesting, kind of under the radar at the moment because, everyone's looking at other cards, but, this was a really cool card when it came out in 2024, and of course, it has been overshadowed. But one card that got super overshadowed, and it was 1 point, okay? At 1 point, the card I'm about to show you was the top chase card of the Scarlet and Violet era in 2024 was Iron Crown. Dude, check this card out, man. Selling right now for 45 US. If I pull this into the graph, what a fall from grace, dude. Honestly, this card was so awesome when it came out. Everyone loved it. Everyone was like, wow, Iron Crown, such cool artwork. And honestly, it's just become a bit of a forgettable card, which is kind of sad, but honestly, not a bad time to buy it, right? I mean, 45 US for this, this was one selling over 100 US, when it came out early 2024. But then again, very interesting to see that. Now, as much as the market's changing, I think there's a lot of new areas that are coming with Pokemon cards. But in these hype cycles, there's also something very important that every collector should know. And the exact 5 tips for every collector to be made aware of can be seen in this video right here. Within this video that's currently appearing on screen, I go over the 5 essential tips for Pokemon collectors. If you enjoyed this video, click the video that's currently appearing on screen. I appreciate you watching the channel, and I'll see you on the next video.